the scene in the list, click the negative button, and it says, are you sure you want to remove? Click yes. You can right click and add a new scene. You can right click on a scene and remove it. And then you can also change the order of scenes by using these arrow buttons here or by dragging them. Another really cool feature of scenes are scene collections. So say we had a need of where we stream to one account that is my personal Twitch account, and we have branding and everything for that set up and a bunch of scenes for that. And then say we do a charity stream every once in a while, we stream for a charity and we have different scenes for that. Well, instead of having all of your scenes for your personal account and then scenes for like a charity account in one like collection of scenes, we can create a new collection, title that, and put all of those scenes in there. That way they are very simple to swap back and forth from, you know, those groups of scenes. Next up is sources. highlight the scene in the list, click the negative button, and it says, are you sure you want to remove? Click yes. And it is, computer is pretty decent. Cool. It lets you essentially, or YouTube, Twitch, Mix, any of the custom. The output section is where we can adjust settings for recording and streaming. At the top, we get two options for output. Like I said, for this should be set to the next setting, which is the output scaled resolution. This should be 40p, set it to 1440p, 4K, set it to 4K. This understand. Let's say we want a display capture. So we'll click on plus here, display capture, and we'll do this same as we did a second ago. Left monitor. Yes, beginners. And that's where sources come in. So sources kind of, those could be images, webcams, display captures, video game captures, and stuff like that. And then our next part is our audio mixer. And this is where all the audio gets mixed down. And there's some advanced settings that we'll look at in a little bit inside of there. Scene transitions, this just lets us select which transition we want to use and even lets us use our own. Check out the card on the screen to watch our video on 100 free OBS transitions that you guys can get. Costs no money whatsoever and is free to download. Super awesome that we have that. And then the last is our controls section. This allows us to, start streams and end them, start recordings and end them, use a replay buffer. And you might not see that right away, but we'll check out that setting in a little bit and show you where to enable that. Get to studio mode and then into our settings and then also exit the program. All right, so before we get into all of the different setting menus that we're going to go through and pick apart piece by piece, I want to mention profiles. Profiles are used to save settings inside of the settings menu. This is extremely useful if you need different settings for recording or streaming, or if you plan on using multiple accounts and you don't want to have to go back in and adjust, to have the settings for one Twitch account, a second Twitch account, a third Twitch account, a YouTube account. all those kind of things, or if you plan on streaming or recording in different bit rates and file sizes and things like that. And this saves you tons of time. All you would do is click on profile, create new profiles, and then like I said, you can rename them, and whatever settings you make for that profile is specific to that one. And then you can create a new profile and then do other settings inside of those. Like I said, extremely useful if you plan on doing multiple accounts or just need a use case of where you don't want to have to mess with those settings over and over again. So without further ado, let's jump into the settings. To do so, we can click on the settings right here in the bottom right hand corner, or we can go to file and then settings. Either one should work for you. And we're going to be looking at our general settings first. So most of these settings are self-explanatory. If you would prefer to change like the language or the theme, you can do so here and then automatically check for updates and stuff and open up stats and things like that. But most of these things people aren't really going to need, and they're, like I said, they're pretty self-explanatory, and you can go through here and see if any of these are applicable to anything that you want to use.
If you like to record,
for the sake of this tutorial, we're not going to go through every single one of these settings because these are pretty much, like I said, for this the third time, pretty much self-explanatory. So let's go ahead and move on to the video settings. Kind of skipping over the general settings, this right here is where I tend to start whenever I'm setting up OBS on a computer for the first time. The first thing you want to mess with is the base canvas resolution. This should be set to the resolution of the native resolution that is of your monitor. So if you have a 1080p monitor, set it to 1080p. If you got a 1440p, set it to 1440p. 4K, set it to 4K. This is just dictating or trying to pull off of what your monitor is set to. The next setting, which is the output scaled resolution, this should be set to the resolution that you either wish to record or stream at. So for example, if I wanted to stream in 720p or record in 720p, I would just click on the drop down button here, and then I would change this to 1280 by 720. If I wanted to stay at 1080p, I would just leave this at 1080p, and that's going to go ahead and let us record or stream at 1080p. The downscale filter is the method that OBS uses to convert the output resolution. So for instance, if we change this from, the monitor is set to 1080p and we wanted to change it to 720p, we can set that here. I would do some research if you guys are interested in trying to find out which downscale filter is best for you, because certain ones are better for static images and stuff on screen, say for example like a PowerPoint or a presentation, and then other ones are really good for live action moving stuff, and other ones are better for like gaming and things like that. So find out which downscale filter works best for you. And the next part, in the last part inside the video settings, is FPS values. I tend to leave it on common FPS values, and if you are streaming or recording, I like 30 or 60. If you're doing any kind of cinematic work and you need these other resolutions in here, they are already pretty much in here. I don't know of any other resolutions or frame rate people might be looking to record or stream at. Maybe if you want to go really high frame rate over 60, you could do that in here with the integer FPS value. But for everybody else, I would suggest 30 or 60, depending on which you plan on recording or streaming at. The next thing to look at is audio. When it comes to the general settings, I normally suggest leaving everything alone if you're not familiar with sample rate and the different types of audio channels. However, if you are experiencing some issues with the audio, the sample rate may be causing that. So look into what your devices like natively support for sample rate, but pretty much everything by default in Windows, not everything, but most everything defaults to 44.1 kilohertz. And if you have issues with it, like I said, go ahead and look at that. Channels, if you're not certain what those are, stereo is pretty typical for everybody. And I don't know really anybody who's doing surround sound inside of OBS, but it's definitely something you have the option to do. And then there's also mono, but for the most part, 44.1 and stereo works for pretty much everybody. Next up is the audio devices. The first two options are for desktop audio. This is where you would typically hear audio from, for example, like your headphones or speakers. You would set this if you wanted people to hear what you hear, for example, whenever you're streaming. The other options are for microphones, are for desktop audio. This is pretty pretty typical for everybody. And I don't know really anybody who's doing surround sound inside of OBS, but it's definitely something you have the option to do. And then there's also mono, but for the most part, 44.1 and stereo works for pretty much everybody. Next up is the audio devices. The first two options are for desktop audio. This is where you would typically hear audio from. For example, like your headphones or speakers. You would set this if you wanted people to hear what you hear, for example, whenever you're streaming. The other options are for microphones or auxiliary inputs. This is for devices that you would use to typically talk to people. So for example, like a dedicated microphone or a microphone that's built into your headset, you would select those here. I'm not too certain what the meters are typically used for, so I'm not going to act like I know what those are. And then moving down to advanced monitoring devices. Monitoring devices used for testing audio levels inside of OBS or just hearing back what is being played. And this is great if you're trying to use it to balance multiple audio channels at once. So if you had like 3 or 4 microphones inputted into OBS, this would give you a good understanding, and you could hear back of what all the audio sounds like kind of meshed together, and you could adjust those as needed. The last section in here is audio hotkeys, and you can enable push to mute and push to talk for your specific microphones. So this is a really cool feature that you can go ahead and do, and then you can even add a delay in for those push to talks or push to mutes. Moving over to the streaming settings, this is where you would go ahead and configure a stream. All you have to do is click on a service and then select your service from a drop-down menu. So for example, if we select something like YouTube, it's going to ask for a stream key. Click on this right here. It'll take you directly to where you need to get your stream key from, and go ahead and copy and paste it in here. I want to state that if you have a stream key, do not share it with anybody, because if they get your stream key, they can stream to your channel, and it does not require signing in. So they are it's very critical to not show that to anybody. And some sites now like Twitch and I believe Mixer offer just connecting your account directly, which is pretty easy to do. You just click connect account and it would pop up a screen to go ahead and sign into your account, and then it'll give you access to start streaming to that platform. The output section is where we can adjust settings for recording and streaming. At the top, we get 2 options for output modes. One of those is simple and the other one is advanced. As you can see here, there are a lot more settings in advanced, and for this video, we're just going to be sticking to the simple options to save on time and kind of make this easier for people who don't know what they're doing inside of OBS. The first section in here that we're going to be taking a look at will be the streaming section. In here we have options for the video bitrate, the encoder, and the audio bitrate. And to figure out what bitrate we need to set this to, we need to determine what resolution we're able to stream at, and there's 2 things that determine this. That's going to be hardware inside of your computer and the internet speed, or the internet upload speed, that is. So since I am unable to speak for everyone's hardware in their computers, we're just going to be looking at the internet speeds today. To check your internet speed, head over to a speed test website. I'm going to be running my speed test on speedtest.net to show you a setting that is actually pretty useful if you don't understand the speeds that well, because most speed test sites measure in megabits per second. However, most streaming programs like OBS use kilobits per second whenever it comes to setting bitrate, and converting from megabits to kilobits is not, difficult, but speedtest.net offers an option to measure the kilobits in the first place, so we don't have to mess with all of that. As you can see here, kilobits per second, or kbps. So what we will do is go ahead and pull up that website, and I've got mine up here, and I'm gonna have some of this stuff blocked out because I don't want you guys seeing my ISP's IP, obviously, or my IP from my ISP. And what we're gonna do is go ahead and click on the settings, and it will bring up an advanced menu. And then what we are going to do is, where it says speed, we're going to change from megabits per second to kilobits per second. And then after we've changed that, we're going to go ahead and click go and run our speed test. All right, so after my speed test, we can see that I pulled 11,495 kilobits per second on this speed test, and we need to cross-reference that with Twitch's standards for broadcasting. And this gives us a recommended bit rate for whichever FPS that's in resolution that we plan on streaming at. So if we wanted 1080p 60 FPS, we would need a consistent at least 6,000 kilobits per second, and 1080p 30 frames per second, 4,500 kilobits per second, and then 4,500 for 720p 60 FPS. And you could see that there. So go ahead and cross-reference the speeds that you get with the resolution that your computer supports, and then also the speed as far as bit rate, what we got from our speed test, and what you would be able to pull or be able to use inside of here. So after you've determined which resolution you are capable of streaming at by, the speeds from your speed test, what we will then do is take that speed and put it in here. So my internet speed was about 11,000 kilobits per second, which means I could definitely stream at 1080p 60 FPS, but I've currently have my settings set to 1080p 30 FPS. So if we go back to that website and we cross-reference that with 1080p 30 FPS, it recommends 4,500 kilobits per second. So what I will do is change this to 4,500 kilobits per second. So 4500, and that is what I need to set my bitrate to. Once again, reference that page. It is extremely useful. Next up is the encoder. If you have a NVIDIA graphics card, then you should see hardware NVENC, and there's a possibility you see hardware NVENC new. What I would suggest is if you have the hardware NVENC or NVENC new, go ahead and use those. Those are going to help your computer hardware not be as bogged down from the recording and stuff of OBS. This is extremely useful if you're playing any video games or if you have a lot of processing work going on for whatever you're recording or streaming. So that's definitely something I would recommend. If you don't have those options, software X264 is pretty good depending on what your hardware is in your computer. So just go ahead and try it if that's all you have. If you're an audio wizard and understand audio quite a bit, then adjust the bitrate as you see fit. But for most streams and most people recording, 160 is perfectly fine. Next is the recording settings. This, in my opinion, is way easier to explain and is easier to set up, specifically because you don't have to run, speed tests to figure out what your bitrate needs to be and things like that. And internet speed doesn't dictate anything here because it's saving to your computer. The recording path is going to be where your videos are saved to. So click browse and pick a place where you want your videos to be saved. Your recording quality, that specifies how compressed the video file sizes are, which the more compressed they are, the worse the video quality will be, but the smaller the video size, the file size will be. So, the more you go up, the larger the sizes are going to be, but the better the video is going to be. From my experience, indistinguishable quality, large file size, if you've got enough storage space, is really good because the file sizes are somewhat manageable and the quality is really, really good. If for some reason you wanted to specify what the bit rate is, if you're like, hey, my stream looks really good and I just want to record the same exact settings as my stream, you could set that here and it will pull the streaming bit rate and encoder options and things like that. The recording format is how it saves the video, the container that it saves it in. I suggest MP4 because it is just very, very widespread and is pretty much usable in any video editing program. The encoder is similar to the streaming option. If you have the option for hardware NVENC, select it. If you don't, software X264 is fine as well. We're not going to mess with any of the custom Muxer settings, but if you are interested, click on this checkbox here to open up Replay Buffer. This allows you to set like a flashback recording similar to features on things like Xbox and PlayStation, where you can record like the last 30 seconds or last few minutes. You can set the time that you want to record here and then how much memory you're willing to allocate to that. This next section is probably one of my favorites, and that is hotkeys. Hotkeys allow you to assign specific keys or keyboard combinations to do certain actions. So for example, if we wanted to mute our mic, we'll go down here to our microphone, and we wanted to mute it with the key combination of Shift plus F12. We can hold down Shift and then press F12, and it will assign this value to it. And then say we want to unmute with Shift plus F12 as well. We can do that, and then we can click Apply and then OK. And then now if I hold down Shift and F12 on my keyboard, you can see that it muted my microphone inside of this program. And if I press it again, it'll unmute it. And the really neat thing about these hotkeys is that you can assign them for a pretty much almost everything that's in here. You can set them for doing transitions, starting and stopping streams, pausing recordings, starting replay buffers, switching to scenes, muting your microphone, muting the desktop audio's microphone, or the desktop audio that is, and so much more. The advanced settings has a few things that I'd like to point out, while other things in here are a little more niche and aren't relevant to 99% of people. So I wanted to make that disclaimer before I skip over a few things in here. Starting first with process priority. This is kind of cool. It lets you essentially tell Windows how important your OBS recording or streaming is, and this can determine whether Windows allocates this more resources, depending on how the process priority is set. So if you were doing something really critical and you wanted to make sure this works at all costs, you could set this to a higher priority. But for the most part, if your computer is pretty decent for what you're doing, normal should work. The next thing I would look at inside of here would be the recording. This gives you modifiers for setting file name formatting, which is really cool because this helps you not delete files on accident, because you can know exactly when you recorded them just by looking at the file type, and there are just tons of other things. You can, see whether the output resolution was recorded at 720p and all of these things, and you can set custom file formatting tags right here, and it is just really, really cool. Another thing that might be useful is stream delay. This can be turned on and enabled here, and then you can set a duration that you want to go ahead and delay the stream by. So if you want to delay your stream by 20, 30 seconds, even a minute, 2 minutes, 5, 10 minutes, you can do that. This is great if you're playing, like, say, video games and you're streaming yourself in a tournament, or if you're just playing online and you are a popular streamer or somebody that's doing pretty decent streaming and you just don't want to get stream sniped. So this is a really cool setting there. Automatically reconnect. This is pretty neat if you do have internet issues from time to time. What this will do is, after so many seconds, so say every 10 seconds, we're going to try to reconnect the stream back to whatever server you're streaming to, whether that's YouTube, Twitch, Mixer, things like that. Maximum retries. This just means we're going to try it every 10 seconds, 20 times, and then if it doesn't, then we're just going to stop. And pretty much everything else in here, like I said, is kind of niche and not relevant to most people that this tutorial is kind of being aimed at. So if you have any questions about that, maybe let me know in the comment section down below and I'll try to answer it if I can. Now we're going to talk about scenes. Scenes are really cool because it gives you a lot of options from a creative standpoint. It allows you to have different point of views. It allows you to add be right back screens, intros, outros to streams and things like that, and even just different recording options and layouts, which is really, really cool. So we can see here we've got one scene. If we want to add a scene, we click on the plus button and we can rename the scene here in real time, and we can add, I don't know how many, but we can add quite a few. So we could add like I said, I don't know how many, but you could add a lot. If you want to remove a scene, just highlight the scene in the list, click the negative button, and it says, are you sure you want to remove? Click yes. You can right click and add a new scene. You can right click on a scene and remove it. And then you can also change the order of scenes by using these arrow buttons here or by dragging them. Another really cool feature of scenes are scene collections. So say we had a need of where we stream to one account that is my personal Twitch account, and we have branding and everything for that set up in a bunch of scenes for that. And then say we do a charity stream every once in a while, and we stream for a charity and stream to one account that is my personal Twitch account. We click on the plus button and we can rename the scene here. You have different point of views. It allows you to add be right back screens, intros, outros to streams and things like that, and even just different recording options and layouts, which is really, really cool. So we can see here we've got one scene. If we want to add a scene, we click on the plus button and we can rename the scene here in real time, and we can add, I don't know how many, but we can add quite a few. So we could add like I said, I don't know how many, but you could add a lot. If you want to remove a scene, just highlight the scene in the list, click the negative button, and it says, are you sure you want to remove? Click yes. You can right click and add a new scene. You can right click on a scene and remove it. And then you can also change the order of scenes by using these arrow buttons here or by dragging them. Another really cool feature of scenes are scene collections. So say we had a need of where we stream to one account that is my personal Twitch account, and we have branding and everything for that set up in a bunch of scenes for that. And then say we do a charity stream every once in a while, we stream for a charity and we have different scenes for that. Well, instead of having all of your scenes for your personal account and then scenes for like a charity account in one like collection of scenes, we can create a new collection, title that, and put all of those scenes in there. That way they are very simple to swap back and forth from, you know, those groups of scenes. Next up is sources. We're going to talk about adding them, naming them, moving them, resizing them, hiding them, locking them, cropping them, and explaining all of the different kinds of them. So I know that's a lot, but we're going to break those down slowly but surely. So we're going to add a display capture so I can show you guys what I'm talking about with those first few things that I mentioned. So we're not going to give them a name right off the bat because we're going to rename it in just a second. So display capture is going to essentially capture what all is on a monitor. So I'm going to select my left monitor. That way it's not as disorienting with that whatever effect we would call that. And what we're going to do now is resize this. So we have to select an object before we can resize it. So we can select the display capture by clicking here in sources, or if we click directly on it. Sometimes it's difficult to do that if you have other sources in front. That's why I explain it this way, so you can actually see multiple ways of doing it. To move something, all you do is click on it and drag, and you can see we're moving it around inside of the frame. We can also scale things down by grabbing on the corners and pulling them like this. So we're able to scale this down to somewhere around here. If you get somewhere, you know, something in here and you're wanting to center it, you can actually do transform controls, for example, if we wanted to center to screen, we could do that, or we could just center vertically under the transform. We can rotate things inside of here using this. So that's kind of cool. So we'll reset transform, and we can see that this is actually back to the original layout. If we didn't want this to move, we could click on the lock here, and this will keep us from being able to move it. If we wanted to hide the source, we could click on the eye tool there. And then another really cool feature is if we needed to crop something, we can hold down Alt, and then instead of grabbing on the corner, which actually we can grab on the corner too, you can see that we're cropping it down like that, or we could crop in from the sides and things like that. So once again, just hold down Alt and grab one of these transform controls and drag it around, and then you can do that. And then the last thing inside of the sources that you can do to each individual source is rename. So right click on it, and then we could call this like monitor left, or maybe left monitor sounds better. So we'll do that and then enter. All right, so now I'm going to show you guys how to build a very, very basic scene involving quite a bit of the most common sources inside of OBS. So the first thing we're going to do, and I want to mention, this is not meant to be a very pretty looking scene. This is specifically to show you guys a bunch of the different features. So I'm going to create a color source, click OK. We're going to select a color, and this essentially just gives us a colored canvas. We'll click OK, and we're going to leave this as our background. We don't want this to move, so we're going to click on the lock here. So we've got our color source, and let's go ahead and rename that. We're going to rename that to background. And let's go ahead and click on the plus again. We want to add something else in. We're going to add in a video capture device. So this will be like a webcam or any kind of video input. And we're going to rename this to webcam because we're going to use our webcam. And I don't want to use that webcam. I actually have a better webcam, so we're going to use this one. So we'll go ahead and do that and click on OK. And we can actually drag this around and we can resize it. So we're going to resize this maybe to somewhere right around here, and we'll leave that alone. And we're going to go ahead and lock that. Now we want, let's say we want a display capture. So we'll click on plus here, display capture, and we'll do this same as we did a second ago, left monitor. Click OK. I'm going to select my left monitor from the list of items I have, and then I'm going to downscale this. And then we're going to put this somewhere right around here. So let's kind of scale this up That's pretty cool. And we could, so we've done color source, video capture, display capture. I'll show you guys what I'll lock this source really quick. I'll show you what a game capture kind of looks like for setting up. We'll click game capture and click OK. And then mode, you can specify whether it's just anything that's full screen. So most games play in full screen. If not, you can select window and then tell it which window you want it to capture. Super simple. And game capture, in my opinion, is 100% recommended if you're playing a game. It's optimized to run better for a game than a display capture. Display capture eats up a lot more resources, so that is something to keep in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and remove, and then click yes. And let's add in an image. So to do that, click on plus image, and I'm going to just add in the OBS logo. And I'm going to find that really quick. All right, so once I found my image, I'll just go ahead and click OK. And I've got the image in here now, and we can see that it is ginormous. So we're gonna go ahead and scale that down. And let's just go ahead and put it over here by me. So we'll go ahead and do this. And now that we've got that, we've got an image, let's go ahead and add in some text. So we'll go to text GDI, and we'll just name this text because we're very creative today. And we're going to tell you guys thank you for watching. I would say please subscribe, but I feel like that's pushing it too far, guys. If you're this far and you haven't subscribed, what are you doing? Come on, guys. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and add that in there. So that's how you could add in some text. And let's look at browser sources now. And then we will look at two more things, which is really neat. So to add a browser source, you'll click the plus and then browser. And we're gonna add in a Twitch chat, which is kind of cool. So we'll type in Twitch chat and click OK. And some of these programs support this by default, adding in a Twitch chat, but there's a lot of different reasons why you might want a browser source. So what a browser source does is it takes a specific URL. So this URL, for example, just has this, or a website. So actually, I'll show you that really quick. So if I went to twitch.tv scopes GG and did this, it would actually load my Twitch page. So that's kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is go to twitch.tv/scopesgg, and then I'm going to click on chat here, click settings, non-mod settings, and then pop out chat, and then this pop out chat pops up. I'm going to Control A, Control C to copy and paste that, and then I'm going to go back in here, right click properties, and then replace this. If I went too fast for you guys, just maybe try rewatching that again. But the whole purpose of this is you can essentially add in browser sources and stuff like Stream Elements and Streamlabs OBS utilize browser sources for like overlays and alerts and stuff like that. So it's a really good way of doing it. And if we need to resize this, we can. So let's go ahead and resize that to 400 by 600. And that's a little more manageable and kind of fits in this area. So you can see with all of that, we were able to add that in really quick. So another thing that you might want to do for some reason is group things together, and groups are pretty cool. So let's create a group and call this video devices for some reason, right? So if we wanted to, for example, we could put our webcam, which is a video device, and say our monitor together inside of a group, and we could turn them on or off at the same time, lock them together so they don't accidentally get moved, like the other stuff on the screen is able to be moved, and it just gives you some features for organizing stuff such as your sources inside of your different scenes. The last thing that we're going to look at inside of sources is filters. Filters are actually really, really cool, and they allow you to have some more customization for the different sources inside of OBS. So if you right click, say on a webcam or even your desktop capture, you can click on filters, and then you can add audio filters and stuff like that. So you could set a hard limiter, expand, compressor, gain, you can adjust all of that, add video delay. A a bunch of really cool settings. And then you can also do color corrections and things inside of here. So for example, I could do that, and I could change the contrast, brightness, all of that stuff I can do directly here inside of OBS, which is pretty cool. You can also, like I said, do the same thing with audio as well for certain devices, and this can be applied to pretty much any source inside of OBS. When moving from scene to scene inside of OBS, we have options to set our transitions, and we can set those inside of scene transition. And you can see a direct cut looks, in my opinion, absolutely awful. And the fade isn't too bad, but it isn't the best. And we can do some really awesome custom transitions. And I've already made over 100 of them that are pre-rendered for you to download for absolutely free. Check out the video in the description down below. Can't plug that video enough. It's honestly took a lot of time to make them, but I'm super happy that I'm able to provide them to you guys for free. They also come with project files if you need a specific custom color that's not included in the pack of 20 colors. And yeah, so go ahead and check that out if you guys haven't already. And yeah, I'm going to show you guys how to do those, or add the ones that I have in that pack into OBS. So if you want to, go ahead and get those downloaded and then come back here, and we'll go ahead and show you how to use them. So to get started, we're going to click on the plus icon and then click Stinger, because that's the type of transition we're going to be using. And I'm going to type in circle. It's late, guys, I apologize. And so now that I've got circle selected, I typed in circle because that's the transition I'm going to use. And then I'm going to browse to where I have my transitions saved. And then I'm going to click circle stinger. And I don't know why the preview is a square, but I promise it is a circle. We'll click that, and then make sure time milliseconds is set to frame. And then the transition point is the 45th frame. So we'll select 45th there, and then we can click preview, and we can see there is a perfect transition of where the screen is covered up whenever it swaps from A to B, and it is good. So we'll click OK. Make sure it's selected over here under scene transitions. And now whenever we bounce from scene to scene, it is a seamless transition, and it looks very professional. The next panel is the audio mixer. The audio mixer allows you to adjust the volumes of all the different audio devices that you have enabled. So for example, my desktop audio is here, and I can adjust that up and down by moving the sliders. And you can also mute stuff such as my microphone, as you can see that's moving right now, just by clicking on these microphones, and then I'll mute them out, and then click it back, and it'll allow the audio to start coming through. Also, if you click on the settings gear and click advanced audio properties, it brings up an advanced audio panel, and from here you can adjust the audio specifically by the audio decibel volume, and adjust offset for left and right side, and then the sync offset as well, and then set up audio monitoring if you need to, and even adjust the audio track outputs inside of the audio settings. The last thing we're going to be looking at is studio mode. That is located here in the bottom right hand corner, and studio mode allows you to preview scenes without switching to them on your recording or your live stream. This allows you to edit scenes when you are live, or adjust them to queue up the next scene.
What do you do with your audio? How do you make your microphone and computer audio sound the best that it possibly can in your streams, in your recordings, utilizing OBS? If you don't know what OBS is, it is open broadcast software, the free software that I use and a lot of people use to stream on YouTube and Twitch. So today we're going to be focusing on strictly audio. So if you want a full OBS tutorial, how to use it, I'll have that linked up in the annotations and in the description of this video. So when we're talking audio, basically the front-facing, settings for audio will be here under your mixer. So as you can see here in the mixer segment of OBS, you can see I can kind of scroll down here. We can see the different audio channels that are available to us. Now, if we go to settings, which is the first place we're going to start this video, so open up OBS, go to settings, and then when you've opened up settings, go to, obviously, audio. So click on audio there. We're going to see a few different things. You're going to see sample rate 44.1, leave that alone. You're going to see channels, stereo. Now, dependent on how you're going to export your recordings, maybe you want to do this in mono if you export later on, but honestly, I'd leave it at stereo to make your life that much simpler. Now, desktop audio device number one, which is this guy here, the first one, that's going to be your computer. So if you are streaming a video game, which is probably what a lot of you are doing, this is how you're going to export your recordings. Maybe you want to do this in mono if you export later on, but honestly, I'd leave it at stereo to make your life that much simpler. Now, desktop audio device number one, which is this guy here, the first one, that's going to be your computer. So if you are streaming a video game, which is probably what a lot of you are doing, this is going to be that audio of your computer. Now, we can have manual control over that sound once we set it up in this settings section here. So for me, it's coming out of my speakers. So I plug my headphones in my Logitech speaker port there, and then I can hear it, and then what's coming out of that is what my audience or viewer is going to hear as well. So for me, under desktop audio device, it is my speakers. Now, you may have it coming out of your audio interface or something of that nature, and if that's the case, click the drop-down menu and select the correct or dependent audio source that you're going to use for your computer audio. I rarely ever use desktop audio device 2, but if you have multiple audio devices, if you're doing console stuff, things like that, maybe you play around with that. But for the most part, choose desktop audio device 1. Now, this one's probably the most important, mic or auxiliary audio device. Now, for me, I am plugging my microphone that you see here in the webcam into a Scarlett 2i2, which is what we call an audio interface. So it allows me to go in with XLR or microphone cable into my audio interface, which then plugs in via USB to my PC. That's how all of that works. Now, everything else here below that, I would not mess with. If you're getting into that kind of stuff, then you're getting into the weeds a little bit, and you really probably don't need this video. So once you've got all of this set up here, go ahead and hit apply and then hit. So it allows me to go my microphone that you see here in the webcam into a console stuff, things like that. Maybe you play around with that. But for the most part, choose desktop audio device 1. Now, this one will be that audio of your that's going to be your computer. So if you are streaming a video game, which is probably what a lot of you are doing, this is going to be that audio of your computer. Now, we can have manual control over that sound once we set it up in this settings section here. So for me, it's coming out of my speakers. So I plug my headphones in my Logitech speaker port there, and then I can hear it, and then what's coming out of that is what my audience or viewer is going to hear as well. So for me, under desktop audio device, it is my speakers. Now, you may have it coming out of your audio interface or something of that nature, and if that's the case, click the drop-down menu and select the correct or dependent audio source that you're going to use for your computer audio. I rarely ever use desktop audio device 2, but if you have multiple audio devices, if you're doing console stuff, things like that, maybe you play around with that. But for the most part, choose desktop audio device 1. Now, this one's probably the most important, mic or auxiliary audio device. Now, for me, I am plugging my microphone that you see here in the webcam into a Scarlett 2i2, which is what we call an audio interface. So it allows me to go in with XLR or microphone cable into my audio interface, which then plugs in via USB to my PC. That's how all of that works. Now, everything else here below that, I would not mess with. If you're getting into that kind of stuff, then you're getting into the weeds a little bit, and you really probably don't need this video. So once you've got all of this set up here, go ahead and hit apply and then hit OK. Now, once you've done that, you're going to be able to manually adjust your audio. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bigger for you guys. Right here where you see mic/auxiliary, that's going to be your mic volume. Now, for me, I'm recording with a separate microphone for the purposes of this tutorial. But what you're going to see is if we actually talk through the microphone that I have, hooked up to the OBS here, you're going to see it ping. You're going to see green lines come up or, illuminated lines come up on this line. You want to keep those in between right here in the yellow. So if you're in the yellow, you are in good spot. If you are in the red up here, you're peaking a little bit. You want to kind of take it down a little bit. And if you're in the green, you're a little low. So you can adjust the max and min volume using this slider below the mic/aux category. I normally keep mine about right here, probably around 80 to 85%. Next is your desktop audio. If I go over here and if I open up a browser source, like let's just say I go ahead and open up, let's say YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and open up YouTube here on my computer, and we're going to go ahead and go to one of my videos. So let's go ahead and go to my channel here, and let me explain to you guys, show you guys kind of what's going on. So I'll open up my video player here on YouTube, and then if we go here and we play one of these videos, you are going to see here that if I play the video, you're going to see that it's starting to peak here in OBS. This means that it's in the yellow, which is good. That's where I want it to be. If I decrease the volume using the slider, you're going to see it decrease into the green. If I increase it, you're going to see it increase into the yellow, which is where I like it. Now remember, you're probably going to be talking over it. So what you'll need to do is play around with this volume. I normally keep mine about right here, about 65 to 70 percentile. Keep it a little bit below the yellow. That way it doesn't go too crazy when I'm trying to talk over the game. And a lot of game sounds can be extremely loud. And then lastly is your webcam. The only reason you would want to mess with that is if you're using your webcam's audio to actually distribute the audio to your stream. So that would be the only reason you would do that. And then lastly, I want to make and show you guys how to make your voice sound good by utilizing filters provided by OBS. Now, a lot of people ask me that come into my stream, they say, Dusty, why do you sound so good? A lot of it is microphone. A lot of it is my recording space. But a lot of it is the settings that I have or filters that I've applied to my microphone. So if we go right here under mic/auxiliary, we click the gear icon or the little cog wheel or whatever you want to call it, and then go down to filters. If we click on that, you're going to see that I have 3 separate filters applied to my microphone. I have a noise suppression, I have a noise gate, and I also have a compressor. Now, I'm not saying you need to go out and add all of these. It's going to be a case-by-case basis, again, up to your recording space, what kind of microphone you have, so you'll need to, adjust the settings to your likings, but let's go ahead and dive into these, and first, let me show you how to add one. So to add a filter to your microphone, go to the addition symbol here, click the addition symbol, and then you'll see the few different ones that you have here. The ones that we're going to focus on are compressor, noise gate, and suppression. Noise suppression is going to be the first one. So go ahead and click noise suppression. That will add the noise suppression filter. As you can see here, the suppression level or decibels I have set to -20. So what this does is that it eliminates a lot of the background noise. Now, just natively, it's going to be set to -30. So when you add the noise suppression, you're going to see it add to -30. I've taken mine, up a little bit to -20 because with my recording space, I don't really have that much background noise. But if you have more background noise, maybe you want to decrease it even more. Just be careful if you get below that -30 or -40 range, it ends up clipping your audio and the microphone doesn't pick up your voice, which definitely would be a bad thing. So keep it anywhere between 20 and 30. Maybe 25 is a good place to start out, and then when you're ready and done, go ahead and you're done with that one. That's the noise suppression. Next is going to be a noise gate, so hit the addition symbol, go to noise gate. Now, once you open up your noise gate, let me explain this a little more. Being someone who loves audio, I try to make my audio sound as good as possible. I'm not saying this is necessary, but let me explain why it would be. So a noise gate allows you to, like when you're silent, like when you're not saying anything during your stream, you're in an intense moment, something's going on, your dog's barking, some, ambient noise or whatever you want to call it, it's not going to be picked up through your mic. So it's going to make those silent times where basically you have a situation to where if you're quiet during your stream, it's going to be completely silent. And then it'll only pick up your voice. And so the close threshold, which is the first option here in decibels, again, is set to -32. Now, again, you choose kind of where you want this to be. You'll have to play around with this a little bit to get it set for you. And the open threshold I have set to -29. So the close threshold, again, remember, if you can't hear your voice, make sure, again, that you basically increase this. And then again, the open threshold is going to be when you speak and you talk into your microphone, when it picks up your microphone. This will make the silence a lot better. And when you speak, it'll make it a lot clearer as well. That's, going to be a really good thing. And then the last one I want you guys to add is a compressor. Click the addition symbol, go to compressor, the first one here, and then under compressor, this is the one you're going to have to tweak the most. I'm not going to get into in depth as far as each one of these here, but what you'll want to do is with this compressor, it will make your voice overall sound better. So you have your ratio, your threshold, your attack, your release, your output gain. So a lot of times you hear people have that nice, sultry, deep voice into their microphone. Again, a lot of it is because their recording space, their microphone, but a lot of it is because the post-processing. And some of that is a compressor. It compresses the audio, makes the output sound that much better. So play around with these, and please, for the love of God, before you go live, record. That way you have a test of what you sound and look like, and you can make the tweaks required to make your audio sound the best it possibly can sound. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I know I did. Just a fun OBS tutorial on how to make your audio sound good. Hopefully it made a filter to your microphone. Go to the addition symbol here, click the addition symbol, and then you'll see the few different ones that you have that much background noise. But if you have more set for you, and the open threshold I have set to -29. So the closed threshold, again, remember, if you can't hear your voice, make sure again that you basically increase this. And then again, the open threshold is going to be when you speak and you talk into your microphone, when it picks up your microphone. This will 30, maybe 25 is a good place to start out. And then when you're ready and done, go ahead and you're done with that one. That's the noise suppression. Next is going to be a noise gate. So hit the addition symbol, go to noise gate. Now, once you open up your noise gate, let me explain this a little more. Being someone who loves audio, I try to make my audio sound as good as possible. I'm not saying this is necessary, but let me explain why it would be. So a noise gate allows you to, like when you're silent, like when you're not saying anything during your stream, you're in an intense moment, something's going on, your dog's barking, some,